Hello, and welcome to another episode of Roleplay Life podcast. It is episode 7, not 8 as it should have been. This is definitely the first time we've recorded one of these. It's not the second. We haven't lost any audio whatsoever and had to do one of these from the beginning again.
In no way is anyone tired or jaded or stressed. Everything is fresh, new, and exciting.
Excellent. Just the way we want it for a podcast. I am your host for today. My name is John, and I am joined today by my usual co-host, Gareth.
Good evening.
And rip cords have been pulled, emergency buttons have been pressed underneath those little glass boxes that hold them. They've been pulled up and pushed. We have a special guest. Dan cannot join us today because he's on special assignment. I have with us today a friend of mine, Alavi. You want to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, I'm Olavi, as you probably heard. I am a gamer, probably like you all. Glad to be here.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Good.
Glad to have you.
Yeah. So the way it's going to work today is we're going to run through the news and then through each of the games that we've been looking at this week. We are going to start with probably the news that everybody's been talking about over the last couple of weeks, and more recently in the UK the last few days. The new consoles are here. We're in a new generation. The PlayStation 5 has arrived, and of course the Xbox X, Y, and Z series, full stop, exclamation point, can't remember what the designation
Alpha,
is.
Gamma,
Yeah, all of those things. They are all
Cyclone,
with
Whirlwind, Tornado. Yeah.
Thank you. They are all here ready for us to purchase. Although in the UK, I'm not sure what it's like in everywhere else. Alavi, you're from Estonia. I figure I should point that out
That is
straight away.
correct.
Yeah, thanks. We, in the UK, the PS5 launched happened on Friday, and there was widespread shortages and problems for everybody involved in trying to get hold of those. Several outlets have issued apologies to people that have pre-ordered, saying that they won't get theirs on release day, and there's actually been very little updates on that, whether those people have actually got their consoles yet. And unfortunately, this has led to a lot of people who have had their consoles selling them on eBay for a markup of about £200 to £300.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen even greater than that. I think a lot of the retail problems, from what I've seen, are from the larger retailers and things like Amazon, from what I believe.
Yeah.
A couple of local game stores to me, they got their full allowance of pre-orders that they got, and they've successfully done from midnight transactions on their PlayStation 5s. It just seems to be, I think, the larger chains that use the supply and demand are like, just keep ordering stuff and we'll send it out to you eventually. Especially due to the apocalypse, as well, as John will know from trying to do PC parts.
Yep.
The sudden skyrocketing because everyone's bored and wants something to do. So building your first gaming PC is right up there. One of my friends, he is desperate to get his kids a PS5 for Christmas, to the point where one of his friends has put his PlayStation 5 on the marketplace, and he's getting people offering him £1,000 plus to take the PlayStation 5.
That's a ridiculous amount.
Which is 250% price markup.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Have you had anything like that in Estonian, Alavi?
As far as I know, the first batch that arrived in Estonia was purely pre-orders, so there was no the first wave of people just going to the store and buying them, because there just simply weren't any units to sell that way. The first wave was just pre-orders, so I think it's going to be much calmer, but I can't be certain because consoles aren't really my area of expertise, so my news aren't as up to date.
That's fair enough. Yeah, just the amount of desperation for many parents trying to get their children one. I know a guy at work who has one, but he has two sons and they want one each, and he's pulling what little hair he has left out of his head trying to find another one, which seems ridiculous to me, but whatever. Yeah, I suppose you do what you have to make your kids happy.
Well, you just inform them that reality is full of crushing disappointment and that you move on from the experience and on to the next thing. I'm wondering if it's going to be a little bit like the Nintendo Wii, because the Wii famously was permanently sold out.
It was, yeah.
Sony, I think, have admitted like mass distribution will be April.
Yeah.
From one of the news sources I was reading.
Did I ever tell you how I got hold of my Wii? Because I got one like the week it came out, but I never pre-ordered. So at the time I was working at Argos, which is like a big distributor, and they had an internal distribution system that that the management were allowed to use, and every day they were getting like 1 or 2 units through from either returns or something like that. And I asked one of my managers to give me a allocation. So I kind of botched the system like before anyone could buy it.
Fight the power, John.
Fight the power, yeah. I'm a well-liked individual in the workplace. I work hard, and the management like me, so I got special treatment.
You're gonna use the perks.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I did, and now I have a Wii, and it sits in a shelf over there somewhere. So
my Nintendo Wii is literally just behind here because I still play Fire Emblem on it. I'm sure John will be shocked to hear that, and anyone else who listens to this podcast will be shocked to hear that I still play Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance, and Radiant Dawn.
Those are good games. I hold nothing against you for that.
Yeah.
So moving on from the new consoles, we should probably talk about some RPG news since that's what we're here for. The first of that should be Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls, if you can get hold of a PlayStation 5, is available to you on the PlayStation 5. And people are playing it now, and they're getting their grubby little mitts into it, and finding out that it is a gorgeous game. It's probably the best looking game on the PlayStation 5, and it looks amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of positive reviews. A lot of people really enjoying the haptic feedback from the controllers in that game as well.
Yeah.
One reviewer was really excited when you go through like the pre-game section, I always like to call it, where you end up fighting the boss in the room, because you go through like the swamps, don't you, the marshes.
Yeah.
And they were commenting about like when you were walking through the water, the motion in the controls just made you know it was like when you walk through sort of a puddle, the sensation you kind of feel, that little vibration against your feet but through your hands. And they were commenting about how great it is, and how a lot of people many years ago, like when Nintendo were like, we're releasing the Rumble Pack for this control pad, and it's going to be the best thing ever, and it's going to be so immersive, and loads of people like, no, it's just, just get your friend to shake you when there's an earthquake scene, it'll be fine. And it's amazing how even Sony themselves have commented on how the Rumble feature was basically useless these days. But look at them now, haptic feedback and very clever control use.
Well, what a time to be alive.
Yes.
What a time to be shook.
I remember like when they were announcing the DualSense at the E3, and everyone was just taking the mick out of Sony, saying that it's a joke. It'll just be like another HD Rumble from what the Switch Rumble turned out to be. It'd just be a gimmick, and it'd be quite disappointing. But from everything that everyone's mentioned so far with these haptic feedback DualSense controllers, the hype is real, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, it's still early days, I suppose.
True. And there have actually been some instances of companies not using it well as well. Apparently in Call of Duty that there is some like questionable choices in it. Apparently
Probably.
Like automatic weapons feeling like revolvers with the triggers, which doesn't swing right if if you know anything about guns. That's not what you want to feel with your automatic weapon. But obviously, this is the first wave of people actually having their hands on these things, so obviously it's not going to be optimized. We should just be, I suppose, glad that some people are showing us how to use it, and those companies will learn from those mistakes.
I was going to say, we'll probably get a game, because the thing I found funny with the next generation, I was talking about this with a coworker, is how a lot of the next gen systems are kind of using last gen games to market. Xbox is using Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is available on PS4, Xbox One, and all the other current generation consoles, but the exclusivity is for the Xbox Series
X and S.
One. Yeah.
Terrible naming.
But yeah.
Yes.
Like, how difficult? Like PlayStation nailed that, right? You do the first one, you call it the console, then you put a 2 on the second one, then a 3 and a 4. I get the feeling that Xbox is the kind of people that when they do a series, it's just a series. It's like the same title, but then it's like an array of different subtitles.
So I heard somewhere that, like, going off tangent slightly again.
Yeah, it's fine.
That this might be the last generation of Xbox, and they're just gonna they're gonna follow the iPhone model now, and just have, this is the iPhone.
The same thing but updated.
Yeah, they're not gonna call
New
it anything
camera.
different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Microsoft have always wanted the console to just be known amongst the community as the Xbox.
Yeah.
Maybe it's gonna become modular, where you can stack upgrades on, and eventually you have a person-sized mech in your house.
Or you can put it on
It's
top
getting there.
Or you can put it on top of a GameCube and make it look like an exclamation point. That picture is about, by the way, you can find that on the internet.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen the size of the current or the new generation consoles.
Mm-hmm.
They're at the point I think consoles and Microsoft are at the tipping point where you basically like, look, this is your gateway into gaming. Buy a PC. And Microsoft are definitely behind that because they're the master race of PCs.
Yep.
That's what they built their name on.
Well, that's it. That's why I'm not. Apart from Demon's Souls, which tipped me very close to actually looking at getting one of these, and then quickly backing away from that because I saw how much people were asking for them. I have a PC, and a very good PC, and I'm very happy with that. I mean,
I've enjoyed the people selling things that they've dressed up to look like a PlayStation 5, like routers with 2 white plates either side of them.
I saw that too.
Yeah. £400 for PlayStation 5, and it's a slimline router and 2 big white plates next to it. I quite enjoy, as a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, the memes of games consoles evolutions matching the appearance of Seto Kaiba throughout the generations, because the colour palette of the original GameCube is the same colour as Seto Kaiba in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And eventually, like, there's the current gen, which is the Dark Side of Dimensions, where he's wearing like the big white coat with like the point ups collar and stuff, and he's wearing like the black suit underneath it. So it's the PlayStation 5.
It's the PlayStation 5.
It's the PlayStation 5.
And the blue eyes white. They are following a dark path.
And the blue eyes white dragon head looks suspiciously like the PlayStation 5 controller as well.
A very dark
Seto Kaiba is the real CEO of Sony, apparently.
Oh god.
Speaking of the controller, like, there's all the talk about the haptic feedback.
Yeah.
But for me, the less talked about but much more interesting aspect of the PS5, in my opinion, is the sound system that was advertised to be like really like directional sound. Yeah, like you can actually hear things behind you even without headphones, as the console would. It's like really complicated, like playing with sound frequencies, but they did a lot of science about it and built different profiles, because the sound sensing profile for every person is different, but there are like trends.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I would imagine that like that's something to do with like soundbar technology, because like soundbars, nobody buys surround sound systems anymore. Everyone buys soundbars, and they do a similar job to what you're probably describing.
Yeah. And apparently Sony did a lot of investing in that system to get really good like surround sound and to create the immersion.
Yeah.
So this is actually what I'm looking forward to once I get my PS5, which is probably going to be sometime next year.
Cool.
I mean, once you've built the extension to fit your PlayStation 5 in and all the other stuff that we've just joked about.
Do you think IKEA are going to like launch a new line of like
console
tables?
Desks?
Yeah, I think they probably have to.
There's a couple of people who've posted photos of the PlayStation 5 on a desk next to the TV, and the PlayStation 5's like 4 or 5 inches taller than their 38-inch TV.
Have you seen the memes going around with the PlayStation 5s next to old CRT TVs with the captions, "Why is my HDR not working?" Those are going about too. Those are good ones. All right, so moving on for the PlayStation 5, we should probably talk about the other big piece of news that's actually been happening. So earlier on this week, Capcom were privy to a ransomware cyber attack, which leaked the information of some 350,000 people. But earlier on, a couple of days later, also led to rumours that haven't really been substantiated yet, but many rumours talking about the company's plans for the next 4 years of games releases, many of which are big in the fighting community, because Street Fighter is in there, Street Fighter 6, the rumours of Super Street Fighter 6, and then Super all the versions that go with that. But also which is what we're looking for, a new Dragon's Dogma game, which apparently is an RPG. I wouldn't know because I never played it. So you can have shame on me. That's fine. But Alavi, what do you think of this news?
This is probably the highlight of my month, knowing that that Dragon's Dogma 2 is pretty much confirmed.
Well, it's definitely leaked.
Definitely leaked.
But it's definitely in their plan to develop, because there were many fears that Dragon's Dogma 2 would never even see the light of day, or was even considered to be developed by the fans or by Capcom, because of how kind of middling the game is in some aspects. But it did some of the things really well, and that resonated and created kind of this cult following.
Yeah. I was going to say, I remember Dragon's Dogma coming out originally, and a lot of Capcom fanboys being super excited about it, because they were like, finally we're going to get maybe a Monster Hunter RPG, because Monster Hunter is, as we've talked about, it's a game where it's basically constant questing. Like the RPG element and the storyline element are super thin, because all they want you to do is go on fetch quests and hunt quests. And Dragon's Dogma was obviously the hope that here's going to be a narrative. We know that they can do that kind of mechanics because of the Monster Hunter series, and we know that they can integrate other subsystems and armor classes. We know they can do it. Can they do it with a storyline? And a lot of people really got into that. I know a couple of people who are still kind of hardcore into that game, because they just like messing around with the class system and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know how that's going to affect your opinion on the sequel.
That I haven't really thought about what the sequel could be, because I have, but I don't put any hopes on that, because Dragon's Dogma 1, it's a troubled game.
Yeah.
There are so many things it doesn't do well, but there is some things that it does well in hindsight, like story. The story is crap until you finish the actual story. Then everything makes sense in hindsight.
Yeah.
And the whole game is based around New Game Plus, because spoiler alert, the story is kind of like a big circle, like a time loop kind of thing.
Yeah. Have you ever played the Drakengard series?
No, but I've read about them.
They're very big into their Game Plus, and Drakengard 1 had the issue where to play as a different character through a level, you picked their weapon, but sometimes you could only change weapons so many times a level, and you'd reach a section where you have to be that character
so you to do a section. Yourself.
Yeah, you could hard lock yourself into out of a level, so you have to do a whole level. Drakengard 2 fixed that scenario and allowed you to do that. However, and I mentioned this, I think last time we spoke, both Drakengard 2 and Mega Man Command Mission X, both games are bought at the same time, both had the issue where there was a character that joined your party who was really good, and you were like, oh, this character's great, and he makes loads of my life easier, and he's got all these great abilities and stats and whatnot. And then, spoiler, they die. And you were like, all the rest of my party is dramatically underleveled, and I'm in the sections of the games where Drakengard 2 gets very Hyrule Warriors style. It's just a mash and mash of waves of enemies. and then you're left with like the small child wizard character who's not really made to fight wave upon wave upon wave
They need to grow up.
undead or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, this game went from being interesting to no fun at all.
Excellent.
That would be the scenario for me where my controller would become 2 controllers.
Yes.
But speaking of Dragon's Dogma 2, my expectations for it would be for it to be a really good game would be to keep its the old combat system, where you can climb monsters and grab and like all the dynamic things.
Oh yeah.
The Shadows of the Colossus thing.
Keep the art style that's kind of like Dark Soulsy, because I loved it. And the pawn system is, in a way, it was kind of like revolutionary, because you could hire other people's like party members, pretty much.
Yeah.
And if at all possible, it would be really awesome to have like a co-op based on that system. Like to have another player play as your pawn, or bring their pawn in and play as them, or any kind of combination of that.
That's kind of what that was leaning towards, wasn't it? Because you couldn't really do that easily back then. Because I mean, this game came out like was it 2010, something like that?
Something like that.
It was quite a long time ago, and like co-op in those kinds of games wasn't really that. Unless you were on the PC, it wasn't really in games that much. So it was their way of getting around that. But yeah, those things are possible now. Like, we should be doing that. Whether or not, I mean, it is surprising news that like Capcom haven't just gone. But this sounds a lot like Monster Hunter, but with a story.
Yeah.
Should we just do more Monster Hunter? I mean, there are literal Monster Hunter stories games.
And simpler combat, actually. Dragon's Dogma has fairly simple combat system, but it's still deep and incredibly fun, because playing mage or sorcerer in that game is... it's just rad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they could just fix the inventory management, that was tedious.
Yeah.
That was absolute hell in that game.
So just a quick question, Gareth, because Gareth is big on his fighting games. Are you shocked and surprised that there is no Darkstalkers announced from this week?
Dude, I've been wanting like a Darkstalkers game from like 2009.
Yep.
The problem is though it's going to stay forever a fan favorite. I think Capcom, their strongest gaming move beyond Street Fighter 6, in my opinion, would be to do what the crowd have demanded a long time, and just do a Capcom All-Stars fighting game.
Yeah.
They've got enough games, enough characters, and enough IPs to make their own Marvel versus Capcom game without the crutch of leaning into Marvel. And the issue, I know what you're going to say, is like, but then the Marvel marketing side is really great and awesome.
No, I was going to say that one of the guys on Giant Bomb, because I listened to Giant Bomb, as I've mentioned a few times, and they basically said that, you know what they need to do? They need to make a Marvel versus Marvel game. And I completely
Marvel
agree.
Tried that with Contest of Champions.
Yeah.
I think perhaps the joking comment with there would be they want to make a Disney versus Fox for fighting game.
Ooh.
And then
Simpsons
that way you
versus
actually
Tangled. That could work.
But yeah, that was one of the downsides to Marvel versus Capcom Infinite, is people wanted Magneto, people wanted Sentinel, but from the X-Men properties, which at the time Disney didn't have or hadn't bartered the rights from Fox yet.
Yeah.
So they gave us Ultron, who was functionally Magneto, when people were like, yeah, but he's not Magneto, so I don't want to play as him. He's Ultron. And it's
as usual, it's the fans' fault, obviously.
Yeah.
It's always the fans' fault, never the developers.
I just have the groundskeeper Willie thing in my head when he's looking out the window. Children ruining the school. It's basically, it's really that person's own fault. In the long run, if we all looked at the problems we have in the world, it's problems we've created for ourselves, and we can probably fix ourselves. But no, it's got to be someone's fault.
Yes. And on that note, I think we should probably move on from the news. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. And we're back. We've taken a short break, but now we're going to talk about games that we've been looking at this week. And we are going to start with Alavi. What have we been looking at?
I am bringing to the table a game called Stoneshard, which is a roguelike, except not that traditional. It's much less net hack and much more case of code, but also much less random. It is a story-driven one and evokes many medieval feelings from The Witcher 3. It has the same dirty, muddy, wet village feel to it, and the game does want to kill you a lot.
Yes.
that low fantasy D&D setting, the grim dark setting for Warhammer players, I suppose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not so grim, but definitely evoke that medieval poor village romanticism feel, where people eat bread, are sick, but there's no evil empire out to kill you, or necromancers invading your room and turning your rib into a sentient being or anything like that. I don't know really what happens in Warhammer, but I assume that would be correct.
I mean, yes and no, but that's a different conversation for another time, I feel.
Yeah.
The Warhammer Fantasy tabletop, their version of D&D, is very mechanical, shall I say. So it's very heavy on like injuries and the effects of injuries long term.
So Stoneshard has some of that as well. But let's start with a couple of things. Stoneshard, made by Ink Stains Games and published by Hypertrain Digital. It's in early access right now. It has been for quite a while, actually. But I should point out I've been part of their Discord for quite a while. They are very keen on staying and updating people. The game has changed quite a lot since I last played it back in May, sorry. This game has a lot going on. We actually made a point of saying that there is some similarities to Metal Gear Solid 3 in this game, in terms of like the way that your character will become injured and you will have to go off to a separate screen to fix them, like using all kinds of things that you can find on hand, like you can find bongs to get your character high so they don't feel much pain, and then get them like drunk so that they don't feel pain as well.
There's a lot of things to not feel pain, which are also still used in the modern day society to not feel pain. To do the same,
yeah. Funny that. But yeah, there's a lot going on in the game. I feel like as dark and grim as it is that Alavi said it was. There's some funniness in the way that the game's presented. So your character, the characters don't articulate well, and that's a design choice. It's not a thing that they've unintentionally done. The characters basically bobblehead around. It's like some mystical creatures just picking them up from their heads and then just whacking them around like they're chess pieces. They don't articulate from the neck down. They just wobble around.
Okay. It's kind of like if you were a really imaginative person and how you would move a board game pieces around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how the characters move. Or don't move, as the case may be.
It always makes me think of when people talk about articulation. Children of the Zodiac was famous for when you killed someone, their like ragdoll pose falling because of the way they looked a little bit like a marionette puppets in parts.
So I don't think it's like that exactly. It's more that they're just wooden pieces essentially when you move them around, and that kind of goes against what the rest of the game's doing. I can understand the design choice because it's obviously a lot easier to move all your characters that way. But the rest of the game is like very faithfully in a top-down 2D sprite-based fashion. They're trying to show this, like Alavi said, this dark world that's got all kinds of stuff messed up with it, and you're just along for the ride. So talking
Just
about
to reiterate,
go on.
the art style evokes that 16-bit SNES feel, kind of like Chrono Trigger,
Yeah, definitely.
just to get the visual image.
Although a lot less cutesy. But yeah, so the way the game plays, that you have lots of different classes that you can choose from, many of which are from a sort of like Dungeons and Dragons sort of esque.
The traditional tropes, yeah.
The
Yeah.
classic berserker, the classic hunter, the classic mage, the classic sword and shield. There are like limited amount of archetypes right now, and
Yes.
they're each like a person with a background, so you can't be like a female berserker or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
so
in the
kind of locked
future,
in.
there will be like a character creator, so
At some
you
point.
can mix and match once the game is more complete. It is in early access right now.
Yeah, so the way that I chose to play the game back in May was as a pyromancer, and what I was doing was basically shooting my fireballs and then running away. Because most of the combat would take place. There are woodland areas that you go from place to place, and then you can go into an instance which is like in a dungeon or a castle or some kind of corridored venue. And what I would do was I would open the door, see there's bad guys, shoot my fireballs, and then run away until my MP.
No, let me get this right. You would get them into a secluded space, fire your balls, and run.
Phrasing, but yes. So I was playing Keep Away, like most of the games that I play. I am a coward, it seems, when it comes to video games, and like turtling. I understand, Oliver, you played differently than this, though. You played like a man.
Like in a manner of speaking, because the character I'm actually playing is a woman, who is kind of like from a noble family but impoverished. So she's kind of like a knight, or used to be. Basically, I play melee, and the game's difficult that way because most enemies are really tough.
Yes,
and the quests you get at the start, they're way over your head. And unless you're like ranged, then you also take injuries very fast.
you do.
Like you get bleeds, and you have to play really carefully. Like you do a fight, and then you rest, you heal up, and then you do another fight, and hopefully you get enough loot in between to cover some of your expenses and maybe come out on top a little bit. So it's like this constant grind.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah.
And the best part is that I love it.
So I came when I first started. I didn't quite understand everything as well as I maybe should have done, and I hadn't come with enough food onto my quest. So what I got into a pretty great situation where I got halfway down a dungeon and then ran out of food. And then had to try and make my way back to the town before I starved, and I very barely made it. My character was taking damage from obviously being hungry, and this game will do that. You need to be prepared when you leave on these quests. It's not just sort of like, this is like the early area, we're going to take it easy on you. Nah, the game doesn't pull any punches. The game actually has like an introduction where it teaches you some of the basics of how the game works, and then asks you to take out a boss. You will die to that boss. You will die many times to that boss. So
interesting, because I beat that boss on first try.
If you are good, you will beat the boss on the first try. Really? I actually struggled. I struggled against that guy.
It was a tough boss, yeah. But this, like, I have played it twice, like on two different separate occasions. Back then, I did the tutorial, but this time when I played again, I didn't. So maybe something has changed. Maybe difficulties increased, or anything could have changed.
I think John was before you in this experience.
Well, so obviously I played it back in May, and I struggled with the boss. And before we did this podcast, I played the tutorial and didn't beat the boss. So
Can I ask a question though? When you went back to the boss, John, were you like, "I've got this time.
I really did.
I know
yes.
your pesky ways."
Yes, I really did. I thought,
And then it
I've
was
got it
followed
this
by,
time. Oh, no, I'm dead. Yeah. So, yeah, the game has permadeath. It has the option of permadeath if you wish to choose it. But the game is quite a long game. When I played it back in May, I played for like 30 hours throughout all the quests, and the thought of losing my character after 30 hours just seems galling to me. I didn't pick permadeath, thank God. But the game sort of doesn't even take it easy on you when you do that either. So if you don't pick permadeath, you can save your game, but only when you're at the inn in the town. So
which you have to pay for.
Yes, you have to pay
classic.
to save. Yeah, it's like your Resident Evil ribbons. Except you have an unlimited amount as long as you have the cash to cover
More
it.
like the save system in GTA 2.
Oh, I
where
don't
you go
even...
to the church have to do a donation of money.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I mean, even in this game, if you wanted to, you could rob some people so you could get some money. You can do that.
Oh yeah.
So, but
On road, chaotic neutral, I see.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so we're saying that you can save the game, but that's few and far between. You can go like an hour, hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours between saves. So the game like is not easy on you. I mean, some people who are like from the Ultima days and games like that would think that this is easy mode. Being able to save, even being able to save, like for some people might be, oh, that's not like how it was in my day. But
Iron Man, bro, you Iron Man everything.
Yeah, you leave that console on overnight for 3 days in a row just so you can try and play the game and then die to the final boss.
Stop telling people about how I played Master System games aged 8.
Yeah,
I used to just turn the TV off to make my mum think that nothing was happening and it was just on pause so I could just resume.
Yeah, and then she wonders why you've spent £1,000 on electricity that month.
That wasn't even the worst that ever happened in my household. The worst one that ever happened was when I got the internet and you used to have to pay per use for broadband. And I may have run up in 1 month over a £500 phone bill for my parents, which may have caused me some trouble further down the line.
Wait, is this when I came round and we tried to play Quake?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, we tried to play Quake on a dial-up connection, and it didn't.
Well, everyone in the world was playing Quake on a dial-up connection basically back then.
Well, unless you were at a university and had like a T1 connection, which was like a satellite connection.
Yeah, or the alternate way where everyone who really played Quake LAN parties.
And that's what we did. Yeah, back in those days.
Yeah. I mean, Quake is a great game, so that bill was worth it.
Oh yeah, like being able to like play against some guy in Germany was just like, oh my god, like it's.
While both you and the guy in Germany probably screaming at the terrible refresh rate and the fact it's like, how did I just get railgunned?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, back to Stoneshard and how it isn't that anymore. Yeah, it
is in Stoneshard, but for us outside of the game, yeah.
Well, the game makes up for the fact that we have refresh rates and good internet now, with the fact that, okay, it's a single-player game, but the game will take no prisoners with you whatsoever. If you get into, like, a 2v1 situation, you're kind of boned. Like, you can very easily get overwhelmed by anyone in this game. So, let me give you a quick example. So my character is ranged and doesn't do well at close combat. So in certain situations, the game it has some random elements to it, and if you can open a door, you have a line of sight. You don't get to see what's on the other side of the door until you open it. If you get into a situation where you open the door and there's two guys there right in front of your face, you're in a lot of trouble. So the game has like some random elements in combat. You can choose to try and hit your opponent, but it's not guaranteed. There's also some things that go on as well with like some mental attributes that can occur. Have you seen those, Lavi, where like you can get like second wind and things like that. You can look really dire. You look like you're gonna die, and then you'll get second wind, and you will start doing well again. Like, so as you get like things like, go on.
But in that sense, the game is really forgiving because there's a lot of like hidden mechanics that can pop up when you're near the end.
Yeah. So
but then the thing is, though, is that a good thing? That level of RNG. I mean, it's great to have those little subsystems, but
I mean, obviously you can't see under the hood to exactly how it works, but
I think it's dependent on how well you've cared for your character. Like, if your character is like well fed, your character has rested, drank, is not hungry, is not injured. I think it's very likely that you'll get that second win, and you even get like a random mood boost, like where your character suddenly becomes optimistic and gains bonuses.
So you could be walking through like this area that's full of dead bodies and things like that, and then they can just like have this little flavor text that comes up and goes, "I've seen worse."
It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, haven't we all?
Well, on a Friday night, who hasn't? But yeah, the game has like a sort of like macabre sense of humor in that sort of regard. But I really enjoyed the game. I did find myself getting frustrated when my character died quite a few times. Just because obviously there are RNG elements to it where I would open the door and there would be 3 vampires behind the door just going, fresh meat, and then they jump at me and obviously I can't fend them off. I mean, whether that's just because I'm not good like a larvae and can get through the tutorial with no problems, or by bad luck, it did feel a little frustrating when I was killed and then had to go through that entire experience again, just because the save points are so few and far between.
Dying again.
Yeah, I think there was one quest in particular that I had to do 5 times, and I was really sort of like, if I don't do it this time, I'm kind of done. I mean, like I said, I hadn't played since May, and the game had only been out for like 3-4 months at that point. So whether or not some of those quests have been changed slightly, I don't know. But there were a few frustrating points, but for the most part, I really enjoyed it because there was a lot to do. So like those Ultimate games that I mentioned before, your character gets new loot, new weapons and armor. There is a skill system that they can upgrade with, but you don't just innately know those things. You have to find books that have like those skills in them. Yeah, so there's a lot.
Very old school Elder Scrolls as well.
Yeah, and obviously,
so, for example, you can't use ice magic until you find a treatise on ice.
Yeah,
is it Morrowind where everyone used to be searching frantically for the levitation book? I remember people talking about.
I never played Morrowind.
My friend Matthew was super into it, so when Skyrim came out, I lost the flat that I was living in to Matt, who also lived in that flat.
Yeah. So my dad is big on those games. Like, he's bought the books, and he will take the guidebook and tick off everything. Like, he went through. He did that on Fallout 3, New Vegas, Fallout 4, Morrowind, Skyrim, like all those games. Like, he buys the official guidebook and then just goes through all of them, just doing everything in it. I think he would actually really like this game. It seems like it's something that's up his alley. Like, people who enjoyed those types of games where there's a big open world and lots to do. If you don't feel like doing the quests, you don't have to. You can just go and out into the world and find stuff to do, because the game will do that. When I played in May, I got through all the quests that were in that area. At that point in the story, you're supposed to go to a different town or a big city or something, but that hadn't been done at the time. And the game would just continually make new quests for me to go on in the area. And it's a big area, by the way. Like, this first area that you're supposed to be in and later move on, it's a big area. If you choose to go off the beaten path, you can explore just for hours and hours. And
you can get lost.
I was just about to say,
Yeah, so, okay, please continue.
So the game won't have... So in games these days, if you have a map, it will show you exactly where you are on that map. This game does not do that. You need like site marks. Like it will tell you when you start your game that you're in. I can't remember what's the name of the town. There's a town that you start in. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the first area you'll be given a map. So you open the map expecting to see some sort of like glowing orb telling you that you're in this particular area. No, you get a map with names of all the places and screens. So on each area as you're exploring, you're on a screen. It's like the old Baldur's Gate games where you can go so far on this particular area and then it will change the screen. Well, the map is divided in sections like that. But you have to keep counting how many screens across you've gone, or you will get lost, or you will need to find some sort of like crossroads or a marker or something.
Yeah, exactly. Fortunately, there are many landmarks, like roads or crossroads, fields, forests, and you can find those points of interest that are like they're question marks.
Yeah.
So you don't know what they are, but once you find them, you know what they are. They're marked on the map, like a camp example, where you can actually sleep and probably save, I think.
Yeah.
At least cook your food.
Yeah. Yes.
So
everyone loves a cooking mini game.
So you don't have to keep counting how far you are from the city every time. You just have to know where the nearest
landmark is.
Yeah.
This is still how I travel to the day, by the way. I travel via landmark.
It turns out Gareth is a level 55 wizard. It turns out.
Seriously, if people tell me streets in the city I live in, I'm like, I have no idea where it is. But if they tell me something nearby, I will be there. It's not a problem.
Weirdly enough, that changed when I became a postman. Knowing street names, kind of part of the job. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Stoneshard. I'm enjoying it. I keep an eye on the Discord, even though I haven't really played it since then. I'm waiting for some sort of like big release, some marquee that they come out with and say, hey, like, you know, it's not 1.0, but this is now. Yeah. So Alavi, is that pretty much everything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, this game lets me live out the fantasy where I'm like this lone wanderer, like this lone mercenary living on the road, kind of.
While sat in my house.
Yeah, like where I do a few odd jobs, kill a few beasts, sell their pelts, and pick up mushrooms, sell them to a herbalist. It lets me live out this fantasy of
adventure,
like a wary traveler.
Yeah,
who happens to fight.
Yeah, it gives that old feel of like the classic games of RPG Wanderers.
It gives you that folk hero feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, well, that was Stoneshard. We will get on to the next game right after this. Alright, and we're back. We've talked about Stoneshard and the news, and now we are jumping to Gareth. What have you got for us today?
Well, this week you and I had a very similar suggestion of game from Steam, and we both downloaded that. However, in my suggestion box, I was listed a game called Monster Sanctuary, and it was advertising that there is a demo available to play. So I thought, yeah, I'll grab this while I'm waiting for the other game. And I really enjoyed this game. Monster Sanctuary is the best way of describing it. It's a strange mixture of like a Pokemon game and a Metroidvania. So it's 2D side-scrolling with platforming. And you play a monster keeper who is part of one of the 4 big family bloodlines. And you have the spectral ancestry bloodline, and at the start of the game, instead of like another well-known creature-orientated game, you are given the choice of 4 monsters to be your starters. You have the water, the earth, the fire, and the air.
Not electric.
No electric.
Oh, okay.
No grass type. And despite my avatar-like thing, I chose the fire element because the spectral lion looked awesome. Since the last time we spoke, my son has played this game and he picked the wolf.
Which element is the wolf? Air?
The wolf is actually water.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So there's a bird
wolf
that is. There's a frog that's the earth element, and there is a bird that is the air element.
I mean, the bird for air, that makes sense, but surely the frog should have been the water element?
The frog, it's weird. So all the monsters have 2 attack types. So they're all like dual type Pokemon.
Okay.
So the wolf is apparently, because he's blue, primarily water, but earth. Or is it? No, water and wind.
Yeah.
The frog is earth and water.
So he's mud.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a swamp or something.
Yeah.
That kind of
I
makes
know.
sense.
I know that my lion is fire damage, status effects, with also the earth attacks.
Gareth,
So you get
tell me something. Do you get to name your monsters?
You do get to name your monsters.
Did you name him Zuko?
No, I named him Leomon after another well-named video game with Mon at the end.
All right, I get you.
But unlike these games that we've just mentioned in Pokemon, where you capture monsters that you meet on your travels, in Monster Sanctuary, you are explained by your spectral pet that monsters in the land are only loyal to their keepers from birth, basically. So you have to gather eggs. So once you defeat a monster, you have the chance of them having laid an egg for you to hatch, and then you get that monster type. And the spiritual animal you have is he explains very early on, or she explains very early on, because they sort of match up your gender pairing. So you get to choose to be, like in Pokemon, a boy or a girl trainer.
Yeah.
And for some reason, there's like some gender pairing. I don't know if it's randomized or not, but that seems to be how it is.
What is there? There's some sort of like Sonic the Hedgehog kisses the human girl thing going on. What's going on here?
I've not got that far.
Okay.
But
That topic never goes there.
Yeah, that seems weird.
That is a Fursona fantasy we don't need.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, the monster that you first pick explains that he has come down the tamers in your ancestral line. So he's taking you, or they are taking you, through like what's like the phases. So they're taking you in this demo section. You're going to meet someone called Burren, but in the meantime, you're going to go on the monster trail, which is the tutorial section. Unlike in Pokemon, where you have to carry around a useless Pokemon, which you have made your HM/TM slave.
Yes.
In Monster Hunter, they get around this that you can change the Pokemon/monster following you, and each of them has a natural ability that you can use in the side-scrolling element. So my wolf, or Oscar's wolf, and my lion both do the cut attack. So if there's a breakable wall, you can attack it and it will break. If you have the bird, I know this because I caught the early stage Pidgey, not Pidgey for legal reasons. If you jump and press the ability button, you use them as like a hang glider, so you can make longer jumps. I've discovered as well that as you jump, you press the button, so like you do it really quick. As your jump is going up, the bird will carry you upwards as well. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're playing the game and you're wanting to get a little bit of cheat for getting into some of the platforms that aren't meant to be accessible, try that.
So
yeah.
Does that mean that there's sort of like hidden areas with like pickups and stuff, or extra monsters?
Very much so, yes.
Cool, okay.
So you end up with... This is where like the Metroidvania section comes. So in the bottom right hand corner, you've got a little set of green squares, which are the map. And as you change screens, it will fill in the map. And they've got little hidden elements and such like that. So you go to meet Burren after going through the trail. And for me and John, there'll be a lovely reference. Burren looks very much like a woodsman. And the woodsman I'm going to name is Binion from Breath of Fire 3.
Yeah.
But unlike Binion, who is a blind woodsman in Breath of Fire 3, Burren has outside of his house a little a ranch filled with the slimes, which are the first monster that you can attack. So he's also a slime rancher. So I get the feeling that someone is making some game references in this game.
Oh yeah.
And he tests your skills. So you get to fight his monsters, and he basically starts explaining the weakness system if you've never played this kind of game before. I've had some experience with Pokemon, so when I was picking my starter, I'll quickly go back to starters. So not only does it tell you your starter's elements, it tells you your starter's attack rate, its defense rate, its stamina rate, its because they call it magic points. It's not like special powers. It tells you its magic point rate. It tells you at the start of a turn your magic points will regen. So it'll give you an idea of your regen percentages of your magic points so that you're not running out of special attacks. If you do run out of special attacks, unlike in Pokemon where you sometimes get in that horrible situation where you can't attack anymore, you have a basic attack that requires 0. And you can go through your items and such as well.
To be fair, like Pokemon has that struggle attack, doesn't it? If you run out of moves. Although it always struck me as quite strange the fact that you can have like Pokemon like, let's say, I don't know, Slash. Well, yeah, you can use Slash and then run out of the PP for that, but you can still use a punch move which uses the same limbs. Like it never made much sense for me to have that.
So yeah, Leomon has there's an attack called Claw, which is like his magic point attack, but then his normal attack uses exactly the same animation. Okay. I mean, it's like a proper 16-bit looking game. I really like the style. The art style is really good. I think it looks really good.
Yeah, it seems really realistic. I
have 2 questions though. First of all, it's being Metroidvania. Does this game have wall chicken?
No, there's no double walling yet, so maybe I'll find a monster later on. This is still the demo, and I haven't even finished the demo. It's pretty big.
Maybe you can find a monster that looks like a wall that actually produces chicken.
Well, it's funny you should mention the monsters, because one of the monsters looks like a Jawa from Star Wars.
Okay.
And when you fight Binion and you beat his first batch, he explains to you that there are champion monsters, which are a little bit like the Jawa that I've just mentioned, who, if you catch them, apparently you can only have them fight on their own. So you get, it's when you're doing the combat system, it sort of stays on the same screen that you're on, and it becomes a 3v3 monster fight. The things that I really like about the combat system is that you get to choose the turn order of your usage. So say you had someone take a lot of damage, your first move, instead of being like, oh god, I'm going to have to wait until the end of my turn system for the heal to heal, and I might take a backlash damage off a reaction or something, what will happen is you can choose to use your healer first. And there's a benefit of that as well.
That's kind of similar to the Pokemon 3-on-3 battle, isn't it? Have you seen the...
I've not seen the 3-on-3, but...
The 3-on-3 battle lets you, you have, your front person, and then you get to change the person that attacks next, and it's sort of like a rotating board sort of thing that goes on. You can't have the same person attack twice. You've got to change positions.
Use all the pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds very similar to this. The thing that I also like is in Monster Hunter is there is a thing called the combo system. And it's not just because I like fighting games. The combo system is important. So when you start, unless you have been nerfed by an enemy attack, you can choose to... So I'll use that as an example. You've got the Vero, it's called, which is the bird Pokemon that you catch first, or bird monster you catch first. You get that, and it has a buff attack. So you can choose to buff your team with that, and then you can choose to use him, use an attacker, and some of the attacks, the reason you might want to use the special attacks over the regular attack is the more hits that an attack does, it levels up the combo bar. So if you use a buff, the buff is 1 hit. and then you attack with something that does a 4-hit attack, so that's 5 hits. So whoever attacks last is getting the benefit of everyone else's work beforehand, so there's like a teamwork strategy.
Yeah.
The heal mechanic's really good, because when you heal, the monster doesn't just heal you once, it's lots of little heals. So I've got to the point where my slime heals 4 times. So when I go, I can heal, buff, and then make one really big attack. So there's some interesting strategy mechanics from just having those little choices available to you.
Does your slime have like a little first aid kit that it carries around with it?
No. The slimes, it's literally just like a little green blob with eyes. Like the artwork is super simple and super cutesy. Like the slime doesn't look too dissimilar to a bean from Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
Oh, those guys. Okay. Yeah. I got it.
Like Binion Burren. In no way was that a Freudian slip.
No.
Burren, his champion is a steam golem. And it looks kind of like someone's made a cutesy metal kettle, because it's even got like the little hat, like the kettle lid as a hat, and then it's got like a little. It's not too dissimilar to like Vivi or Orko style aesthetic.
Okay.
But I think the system's really great. I think there's a lot of interesting things. One of the things that's really good is the level up mechanic as well, because when your monsters level up, they earn a skill point. And you actually have skill trees for all the attacks, so you can actually really customize your team. So even if you have, say, a lot of the same monster, you can have them all specialize in different skills, rather than that horrible thing. Like, there's nothing I found more annoying in early Pokemon games when it's like, it's your starter and the same 5 Zigzagoon, and it's like, yep, the same animation over and over again. Whereas in this case,
Growl and tackle.
Yeah.
I think with that skill tree, I think you just sold me on that game, because I love systems like that. That's a lot of customization.
Yeah,
I don't care how broken it is. I think it's great.
I can see that being difficult to sort of like balance, but I can also see the benefit of it. I mean, in Pokemon, if you ever wanted to get like a particular skill set, or you made a mistake and wanted to change it, you had to go to like, there was somebody called a move rememberer or a move forgetter.
I know who the guy you mean.
Yeah, like the weird stuck on things that to get around like these problems that the game has just seem really badly done. I mean, this seems a lot more thought out than a lot of the Pokemon has been for the last few years.
I mean, the other thing, like, you know, your Pokemon can usually hold 1 item, unless they're a special Pokemon and can hold 2. The monsters in Monster Sanctuary actually have like inventory slots, so they have a weapon slot and 3 spare slots. So early on, you find like the thing I found funny is one of the weapons you find early on is a Morning Star. So just think of a Morning Star in the hands of my Spectral Lion. The word hands is probably not the best choice.
How is it holding that?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that's quite funny is like the other items you get. So you can get rings and necklaces and chains and armor. And I was getting the Digimon evolution chart thing going on in my head again, on how it starts as a tiny blob and it ends up as half a tank attached to a lion with the arm of an elephant and all the other madness. But yeah, you get the slot, so you can. Yeah.
So is that something that happens in this game? Do your monsters evolve then?
They do not, from what I've noticed so far.
Oh, okay.
Admittedly, as I say, I'm still in the demo. I am really tempted to go for the game. I think the game full price is about £15-16 on Steam through the ever lovely Team 17. I might wait until I think it's free. It goes like every quarter for about 3 or 4 weeks. It goes down to 33% off, so it's about £10.
So how long's the game been out?
Without opening Steam, it has. I think it's just come out in the last couple of months on full release.
Okay.
But there's been like a lot of early access stuff since, I think, before around Christmas time. I'm sure I remember someone talking about how they saw a feed about it starting in November last year. So there's been quite a bit of development of this. If the early, like let's say the early access was really last November, and then the proper release date was, I want to say, where are we in? We're in November now. I want to say it was like June or July time. So it's had it's been out a couple of months. It's not super brand spanking new,
No.
but it's also not deathly old.
To be fair, none of the games that we're going to be talking about today are particularly new. We're still in that sort of like in between area between Cyberpunk and all the other things that are coming out.
Cyberpunk and things that aren't Cyberpunk.
Things that's pretty much the RPG scene right now. To be honest, let's be honest here. Everyone's getting out of the way of Cyberpunk. We should have been playing it now, but we're not.
I mean, you say that, but Ubisoft are releasing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. There's a lot of RPG games coming out between now and Christmas. But yeah, there's a lot of customization available, whether it's through equipment loadout, whether it's through skill trees, team setups, team order. There's a lot of stuff. The narrative, as you're traveling through the land, you come across these things called waystones, and they have like little slogans or poems and stuff, and they basically allude to that mankind is basically a plague on the planet, and that there was some kind of monsters Illuminati that had originally ruled the land. The land I can't remember the name of, but there's also quite a nice little cut sequence at the beginning of the game as well.
So is that how the game
basically
does its storytelling through these poems?
Through the waystones. Yeah, so there's waystones, and you actually even meet NPCs in your travels as you're going along. So there's a couple of traders and stuff like that, or a couple of people going like, have you heard about, I've heard tales that in these caves there's such and such a thing. So yeah, you get lots of little interactions. I think there's a lot of depth in this game. They've even, with me having spoken about that, they've already done an extension pack to add in 4 legendary monsters. I think it's called, basically they're all like demon style monsters.
Cool.
So there's, I think, is it called under dungeons or something like that? Underworld, Monster Sanctuary Underworld, perhaps.
I don't know.
So there's
plenty
of room in this game.
So the game is still getting content updates.
It's getting content
despite
updates.
Being released.
Yeah. I mean, if I could open Steam up without it just flashing wildly across my screen at the moment,
I think I have it here.
I think they're in.
I think I have it here that the game is on pretty much everything apart from phones. So we're talking PS4, like Xbox One, Steam. I can't remember if it's coming to PS5 and Xbox Series X, but
I think a lot of those games are just getting instantly ported across.
I won't be surprised.
But the game is nice and straightforward, but the depth is unreal. I downloaded this thinking like, oh, there's 10 minutes for the other game we're going to talk about to download. I'll play this for 30 minutes. I played it for nearly 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
And at no point was I like, I'm going to put this down. I was just like, I did that classic thing that we all did probably as children. I was like, I'll just do this bit, and then I'll do my homework. And then I'll do my homework.
Yeah.
Well, I'm halfway through this bit. I'll just finish this bit, and then I'll do my homework. I basically did that, and the only reason I was like, right, I'm actually having to eat food now. I'm going to turn off the game, eat my food, and then I'm going to move on to Fae Tactics, which is the next game we'll be talking about.
Yes.
Before we go, one last question. Is the game only single player?
From what I've seen, it is only single player, but I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line, I think, is it May Roy or whatever the parent company is?
It's something like that. The pronunciation, it looks like Moi Roy?
Yeah.
Ray? Yeah, something like that.
Moira.
Sure.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they come back to this property. I hope it finds a good community, because I think what a lot of people's problem is, and I think it was a little bit mine before I actually got the demo, was a lot of people were like, it's just a Pokemon run alongside. But I think there's a lot of really nice elements. I think it's really well crafted. The storytelling's interesting so far, but as I say, this is still just the demo section. I'm not even on into like the main storyline yet.
I think it's come out at a good time as well, because like there are actually a few people that are sort of like a bit jaded with the Pokemon series. I mean, Sword and Shield does have its problems. As nice as it is, and a lot of fans do like it, there are some people that are unhappy with the lack of changes that have come to the, to make this an easier experience for a lot of people. I mean, you just have to look at how a lot of people can't transfer their favorite Pokemon over to the new game, the Sword and Shield games. There are still people that can't do that, and from what it sounds like, these people are not immune to the Pokemon series. They have looked at it and gone, well, we can do this better. And I would imagine that, if it looks as good to you in this sort of demo perspective,
I think the other thing as well is like Pokemon. There was a lot of all the random battles weren't really random. Like you could see where they were, and they'd always be in the footpath that you had to follow. So you had to get attacked to fight that, to do those battles. To fight Bugcatcher and all that lot. In this, because it's side-scrolling, you can mess up. You can like mistime a jump to avoid a battle, but a lot of your monsters like regen in between battles automatically. So I'm assuming later on there might be a more fatigue-based system that kicks in. I've not got that far, but I think it seems really well balanced. It seems like they're trying to balance the dungeon crawling aspects and the Pokemon fight aspects, and it seems more interesting because I actually prefer the fact that I can choose my battles a little bit more than there's nothing like, rather than being like I've beaten all these random battles that I can't avoid, and now I've got to go all the way back to the town that I've just come from to heal up my Pokemon to continue to the next town. Or it's like spend all of my money on potions straight off the bat.
Yeah, that is one of the issues I have with the Pokemon games, is just that I get fatigue just from the cycle of, go out, don't make it all the way through, okay, come back, have to do all of it again, and just that grind factor, just it annoys me. It really does. That's why I don't finish Pokemon games anymore. I finish Red and Blue, but anything after that, I get about halfway through it and I just dive off.
That's when you play with an emulator with a speed up option.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, one of the ones I always remember is one of my friends explained to me how they were leveling up their eggs on Pokemon. I'd have to ask Jim which one it was. He basically put his Game Boy with a weight on the left-hand side of the D-pad. Yeah. And there's basically a section of quicksand that if you walk onto it, pushes you back, because every 10,000 steps evolves your Pokemon. So he'd put it on. He'd put it on in the charger, go to school, and everything would be leveled up to max level.
The fact that you got to come up with that, it just shows you like it's not a perfect game. Like the fact that they sell millions of these things and people just yum it up is just, it's beyond me sometimes. I mean, okay, I'm definitely guilty of that as well. I've bought Pokemon games and then gotten like, I don't know, 15 hours into them and gone, I'm not really enjoying this. But I've already bought the game at that point, and I keep doing it. I don't know what magic spell Nintendo have over me, but they...
Cute animals. That's what it is.
It is. It really is.
I want to create cute animals, illegal dogfights, and see if I can be the champion. I mean, in Monster Sanctuary, you already start off as a member of the Elite Four.
Great. Okay.
Because you're one of the 4 family bloodlines. Yeah. So it's kind of reverse Pokemon in a weird way.
All right, so swiftly moving on from the illegal dogfighting simulator that we've come across. We're going to move on to our last game of the day, just after this, though. See you in a minute. And we're back. we're here to talk about the last game of the day, and it's me to talk about it. It is Fae Tactics. So I picked up Fae Tactics a week or so ago at this point. It was on offer on Steam for 40% off, which made it just under a tenner. And Fae Tactics is developed by Endless Fluff Games, who I've never heard of before, and published
Great
by...
name, though.
It is a great name. They've been published by Humble Bundle Games. Now, I took a quick look when I realised that this was another Humble Bundle game to have a look at the games that they are publishing now, and like some of the best indie games from the last 18 months are all coming out by
They're in there, right?
Yeah, we've got like a quick list. Void Bastards, Forager, Slay the Spire, Disco Elysium, Iconfell. These are all games that have been published by Humble Bundle. So, yeah, they are very, very quietly, I'd like to say, that they are very quietly making a big name for themselves in the publishing business, which surprised me. But
It's like the reverse Microsoft, right?
I can shed some light on that. Because I was also looking for financing for a game company that I was trying to establish, which I failed at. But they are moving in those circles and basically looking for talent to publish. So yeah, they are active in that scene, but it's not something that a consumer sees.
Yeah,
definitely. So Fae Tactics is available on PC and Switch, no other consoles, which kind of surprises me actually. You wouldn't expect to see this maybe on the Xbox, but definitely on the PS4, which it isn't available for. So Fae Tactics, you may guess, is a tactics game, shock horror, and there's some Fae things about it. That's it. How do we feel?
great review.
Thanks.
So I also bought this game.
I do have more to say, by the way. That's not just
with John talking about platforms, and this is gonna rub John up the wrong way. At times, for me, it feels like it's a very souped-up mobile game. There's certain elements of it which, if I was that kind of corporate guy, I could see them making this as a mobile game, and you could monetize certain elements to make it definite pay to win. I felt for me a little bit that the storyline, like the mechanics in this game, are solid, like super mega solid mechanics.
Yeah, they are.
One or two of them are a little bit poorly explained, but a lot of the stuff is pretty common sense and it makes sense when it appears. The storyline's a little bit weak for me.
So speaking
the arts. Sorry,
to
I was just going to quickly say about the art style, but we'll move on.
Fine, it's my game, but you can talk. It's fine. I'll let you.
I'll just quickly say that the art style is very cutesy anime. It's very PlayStation era, Japanese RPG style stuff. So that's great.
Yeah.
Go on. Is it like pixel art or is it like a traditional painting art or?
No, it's
isometric pixel art.
Yeah.
Okay, so grid based also.
It's what you would expect to see from a tactics game, to be honest. Like when you think of a tactics game, you think of Final Fantasy Tactics, and it's that.
Not me.
It's not quite as painterly as that, but it's definitely a very well made game in terms of its visuals. In terms of the story, though, you play as Peony, who is a young magic user in a world that is it's our world apparently, but it's very, very different. There are some elemental gates, as they call them, that have been opened and let out all the Fae creatures into our world, and this has destroyed everything that we know. And this brings a bit of an issue I have to the game. So, talking about the visuals, they're very well made. You have all these very cutesy creatures, but the world around us has burnt out cars, and you expect to see Terminators coming from one field and looking into the camera because it just looks like the Judgment Day has happened. But instead of a Terminator,
some kind of dystopia,
yeah, instead of a Terminator, it's some like water bird that looks magical and just appears on screen with these big bright faces, these portraits of these wonderful sprites, but it's standing on top of a burnt out car. It kind of doesn't mesh in my eyes with the mystical cute creatures, burnt out vehicles.
See, for me, it was fine because for some reason I had an epiphany a moment ago when we had that little break of Pioneer's Winry Rock Bell from Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
And she has a motorbike that breaks down and she goes to find the parts, but it's like in Full Metal Alchemist when they break down in the desert. And my brain just was like, oh, well, it's this pseudo steampunky dystopia, magic's invaded Earth. And for me, it didn't cause like a disengagement.
Okay, well,
I was kind of wanting them to give me some story to explain why the world was the way it was.
Yeah, they do that, but it's kind of throwaway. Like in the first 2 minutes of the game, that they explain what happened. Do
they explain when it happened? Like how much time has it been since the apocalypse?
It was November 2019.
What? No, they don't really. But yeah, this character that you play as, though, Peony, your raison d'etre, your reason for doing all of this, you're searching for your mum, your mama, as she calls her, and she set out on this quest with her motorbike and her two friends, the water bird that I was mentioning before, who's called Pio, and Chico, who is a dog and a very good boy and MVP.
That's just the boys.
He really is.
Can I just I made a realization. We were talking about Chico, the turn order mechanic, and how Chico is nearly always first in the turn order.
Yeah.
And I've worked it out. He's got to keep up with that motorbike, hasn't he? Because the bird probably sits on a shoulder or flies.
Yeah.
There's no room for a dog on a motorbike. It's not Wallace and Gromit. There's no sidecar.
There is no sidecar. No. Yeah, that's a good
point.
No
wonder he's so fast.
Yeah. Okay, good point. Well made.
He can run 30 to 60 miles an hour and not be tired and fight for you.
True. Yeah, he has to have some mad stamina. Yeah. So yeah, in case anyone who's listening to this isn't aware, like a tactics game is usually a turn-based RPG. You know, you have your group of guys, in this case Peony, Pio, and Chico, and you're fighting off against, on a map with a grid, your enemies over on the other side of the map, usually. Like in some cases that's different, like in Vandal Hearts 2, where everyone moves at the same time and madness ensues. But yeah, the
problem with that is there's no indication of what the enemy is going to do, and there's nothing worse in Vandal Hearts 2 when if it's a really hard match and it's like a 1v1 and you both like circling each other a little bit like
swiping at nothing. You're just there like for days, just trying to find
the Irishman scene from Family Guy, where it's like, oh, that's the O'Malley brothers, and they've been circling that spot for 20 years, daring each other to throw the first punch.
Yeah. But back to Fae Tactics. This game is very a traditional sense on surface, but it definitely has some of its own ideas that it brings to the table. And one of those that I think is probably the best thing about it is that it has assists and what is it called, the moves that you do when
do you want me to talk you through the tutorials?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Fight 1, walking and punching.
Yep.
Fight 2, walking, punching, and the assist mechanic. Fight 3, walking, punching, assist mechanic, and the waiting mechanic. Fight 4, all of the above, plus the familiar summoning, plus magic, and something called the talisman that has not yet been explained after 2 hours of gameplay.
All right. Well, obviously, I'm further on than Gareth. I'm like
much
maybe
further.
11 or 12 hours in at this point. So
still going back for more.
Yeah. So the assist mechanic is and the weight mechanics are probably some of the best things about this game. Normally in tactics games, there is a lot of moving about, and that leads to like
turn and wait.
Yeah, turn and wait. Lots of stretches of not doing very much. But in this game, there are lots of actions that you can take that are directly tied into those moving and not being able to do much. This also leads to like. So you have choices. You can buff your characters. You can debuff the enemy, and you can do certain actions. Like Chico, the goodest of boys, is a protector. So what he will do is...
This mechanic is broken, but yeah.
it kind of is. So he will move to an area, and then if he doesn't take direct action, he becomes a protector. And what that means is it will bring up an area of effect on the screen, sort of like in a diamond area. And
it's a 3x3 square with the middle ones having an extra point, don't they? For the grid. Yeah.
And that becomes his range of protection. And all your characters that are on a similar playing field, if they're too high or too low, it isn't included. But if someone takes a direct attack against any of those characters, he will take the hit for them.
Yeah.
So what that ends up being is like he's a super tank, a super mobile tank. Because what can happen is you can have Chico make that, because he moves first, he has high speed, so he goes first. He will then set up his area of influence, and then your characters will move later on outside of that influence, but still be affected by it. So you can have like Peony, for example, who normally at the early game goes after Chico, will move like 4 or 5 spaces ahead to attack somebody. She will then be attacked by somebody on the other side of the map, and Chico will go, "Nuh-uh," and then just jump like 20 spaces forward and take the attack for you.
Yeah.
That is broken, I will agree.
The goodest boy in shining armor.
He really is. There is a level up mechanic that happens with the game. You get points to put into
hit points, magic points, and special points.
Yes, and
it's attack, defense, and special points, isn't it?
Yeah, and the special things can be different for different characters.
Yeah.
So if I saw that and what was going on, and immediately went, well, I'm just going to put all of Chico's points into defense, and he's just going to be a brick wall for everything, and that's kind of what he does. But this also leads to, so in most of these types of games, like taking actions like this will lead from a mana pool, which will prohibit you from just sitting around turtling and building up your characters forever. This game doesn't have mana. You can just build up your characters. I think there is a limit on how much you can buff a character.
I know Peony's chain ability is 3 turns. You can have a max of 3 turns. I'm unsure what it's like for the fighty gremlins agility. I know.
So there are characters that can
and debuff as well.
Yeah, I think you can buff and debuff forever, as many times as you want.
I think there's a couple of them where they buff for so much. So like when you get in the blue health, I think you can only get another bar's worth of blue health.
No, you might be right on that. I haven't really tested it that much. But so this leads to one of the major problems I have with the game. It kind of encourages turtling. There are some missions later on that like get around that from giving you like hostage situations for characters, which mean that you are forced to move forward in a timely manner because otherwise you will lose. But in some of those early missions, it's very easy to get into a situation where both sides are just buffing and buffing and buffing, and eventually coming together to have like a slap fight because everyone has way too much health.
Or too many buffs.
Yeah,
buffs don't have a timer, like a duration.
No, it depends on some of the actions. So you've got red health and you've got blue health, and the blue health is once it's gone, it's gone. It's a shield essentially.
Mm-hmm.
The red health is obviously your normal health and will return depending on heals and what have you.
But your red health,
I mean, like things like
yellow health,
like a +1 defense, take less damage, lasts for 3 turns, things like that.
I think that stuff does degrade, but the big one that I have an issue with is that you can increase your blue health, your barrier, and that doesn't degrade. You can have it for as long as it's there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is you've got characters that can have like, let's say 100 health each. That's fine. You can then buff your characters to have like 200 blue health. And then they will come together and then they will slap each other for like 20 each turn. And there was one fight in particular early on where I got into a situation where all the boss's characters had died, apart from the boss itself. And the boss character had like an ability to regen its blue health by itself by being hit. Okay? And it had it had a unless it's being hit from behind, it had like a 36% chance of evade and a 36% chance of this. I think it's called Tranquil. This ability, where it just by the act of being hit will regen some of its blue health. Now, you would think, oh well, the evade and this Tranquil chance are not multiplicative, but they are. So 66% of the time, he was either evading or getting blue health back.
Yeah.
Which meant I had this character was surrounded, by all my characters because everyone else was dead on his team, and I was there for 20 turns trying to take this character out. Granted, I had taken the most. So the game will give you chances to choose where to go in the story. And I chose what looked like the most difficult point because I found the game quite easy at that point. And I came across an area that obviously maybe I shouldn't have gone to, and it was quite difficult. Because it shouldn't take 20 turns to kill a character, but it did.
I mean, also you were mentioning to me like there's a point where you get more summoning more summons as well. So like I went off, I saw when you get to that story point, you're given a choice of trails, and there was one and it had like 2 map marks and a sword, and there was the other one with 2 map marks. And for some reason my brain went, well, surely I'm probably going to be better side questing to the 2 map marks to get stuff, level things up. And at this point, I'd reached the point where the summoning mechanic known as the talisman, I believe, had come into effect. So I just want to quickly talk about the Fae, the enemies in the game. The art style of them, the first ones you meet, they're all gremlins. So you've got it's just called a gremlin, and then there's another one, and it's called a shaman, and I think there's a witch, but they all look the same. Unfortunately, all of the gremlins look like members of DuckTales have fornicated with an array of other characters from other animated series. The first gremlin you meet with has got like blonde hair, but the nose, and it's a nose, looks a little bit like a duck bill. So it, fighty gremlin, Goku McQuack. Then you come across like the magic gremlin, and you can't see like the eyes bit on the fighty one, so it's like black. But you can see the nose, but the face is more white, and there's like the cowl. So Magic-y Gremlin, Vivi McQuack. And then you come across the shamans that are in green. So Vivi McQuack, also in green. There's a couple of things in the art style which, they're enemies, the general NPCs, I get that, and palette swap to show strength difference. It's a classic game trope. But the art style, it's one of those things that for me, once I've seen it, I cannot unsee it.
Yeah.
And that sticks in my head.
So I will say in the defense,
really mechanic a bit as well.
In the defense of the art style, of the characters, they're all really well animated. So the way that
the animation's amazing.
The way that the characters are described for Gareth is that he's talking about the portraits that you see when each character is highlighted. But on the battle map, each of the characters is really, really well done. This game is like in a sort of PlayStation 1 era set of sprite levels, but the terms of animation is tip top what that era would have been able to produce.
Let's put it this way, if this game had come out 20 years ago on the PlayStation 1 or even the PS2, the market at that period would have just gone nuts for this. Yeah. I know if I'd have played this as a teenager and not after 2 hours of Monster Sanctuary, I'd have lapped it up as a teenager, and maybe Monster Sanctuary spoiled me before I went into this game. But for me, one of my gripes with it as well is the way it gives you the narrative, because there's a lot of loading screens in between fights.
Yeah, there is.
And it has a lot of narrative, which kind of ruins some of what, if it had been like a PlayStation game where you'd had the in-between town scenes probably more frequently. It gives you the narrative in the loading screens, or it explains the lore of the world in the narratives in the loading screens. And I just felt like there could have been character interactions somewhere about that. Even the non-aggressive NPCs that you meet, they have like no lines. Like the first mechanic you meet, basically you just meet him and go, nope, go somewhere else. Is basically the crux of his dialogue.
Essentially, yeah, but there is some dialogue that's happening later on. I think they kind of like led to their own downfall with that, like that by giving you choice. Obviously, giving choice on to which order to do things can obviously make telling a story much more difficult.
I mean, also as a storyteller, you can just tell them that once you reach that point, it's like, oh, I've got no use for you yet. I mean, currently for me, I described the narrative of Fae Tactics as a girl and her pets go on a picnic and then apparently have to slaughter an entire Fae kingdom to find a bike part.
She does seem all too eager to like wipe people out. It does seem like that.
But the thing is, though, is the Fae. It's like, oh yeah, they turned up and they became a problem, but no one really explains why they're at war or why they're a problem or why they attack people or why people attack them. It's
Do
just
they
like
actually die or turn into fairy dust or just get KO'd?
So it's funny you should mention that.
they turn into Pokemon cards.
They have the possibility of turning into cards, and then you can pick those up, and then they become summonable by you. I forgot to mention that, actually. Thank you. So there are different levels of characters in the game. So you have Peony, who is a boss character essentially, and you've got
they call them.
Yeah. No, sorry. So bosses, if you defeat them, you win, and obviously the inverse of that is true. If Peony goes down, you lose. You then have leaders.
I can quickly correct that because I had a fight where Peony died. And I was still able to finish the map with Piochu, the bird.
Actually died or just down?
She died. She died on the map. So another thing, I think, I'm not sure if John mentioned it. So if you run out of red health, you have like a D&D style death saves. So at the start of every turn, unless you're interacted with, you succeed a death save. So after 3 turns, you go up to 20 hit points. But if your enemy hits you when you're downed, after 3 hits, you're dead. And there was a map with a cannon on it very early on, and I didn't understand the range mechanic on the cannons, and I lost Peony due to bad positioning on my part, and she died. So I actually finished the map with just the dog. Which was challenging, is what I'm going to politely describe that as.
So yeah, you have. So let's not give our own people as the option there, as the example. If you're attacking the enemy, there can be boss characters who obviously there is some story going on with them, and if you defeat them, you win. You have leaders who are kind of like Pio and Chico, your main characters. If they are defeated, they get downed. And then you have to try and deal with them that way. You have to continue attacking them, otherwise they regen their health. And then
there's also a benefit because some maps have 2 leaders. So if you can down both of them, you can actually get additional rewards. So instead of killing them, you can have like a mercy victory, I suppose, is the way you'd describe it.
Yeah, as you can tell, like there's a lot going on in this game. There are lots of mechanics, and for the most part, they make sense. It's just the whole like no mana thing just doesn't to me. I after playing the game this amount, I kind of wish there was a mana system that forces you to be a little bit more careful with how you're playing. Because there were definitely times when I've been sort of like just slapdashing around, just do whatever. There were definitely times when you don't have to. I've definitely gone through matches just not paying attention to what I'm doing.
But you can fix it. You can fix it in post, so to speak.
Yeah, so
I mean, you can fix it on the fly.
So yeah, the only characters that, by the way, will disappear after they're downed are the familiars who you have on these cards. And each time a match starts, you summon them. But even if they're downed, they're not gone for good. They can be resurrected.
Resummoned.
Yeah, for the next map.
So the cards aren't used up?
No.
Nope.
And they don't even lose the XP either. At the end of the map, they still get the XP. So
that's actually really awesome.
Yeah, they're basically fodder. Like there's no like downside to losing them. But where was I going?
Them.
Well, yeah.
To our classic Captain Cannon fodder slogan.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I kind of wish that there was more more consequences to using the actions that you do, because what will happen is in some of the cases I've come across, I've just thrown everybody in, and then when you've done with that person or you're waiting for the next wave to come across, you just heal everybody back up, and you can do that very
That's what
easily.
I've got in my notes as well.
Yeah.
Because the other day you were eschewing how great it was to not have to worry about mana and stuff like that, and we got into a contentious argument.
We did.
And my last note in my Fae Tactics notes reads, unsure if the lack of mana/skill points/actions points is a problem for balancing, as so far I feel far too strong. Conversely, hang on.
It is a problem.
To stop me sounding like Sean Dyche. There was a game, a Capcom game called Breath of Fire Dragon's Quarter, and one of the issues with that game was everything used a thing called AP, action points. So you could move really far and you could move to the edge of your movement circle, but then you couldn't attack or cast spells because you ran out of AP. And this is almost frustrating on the other way, because, like John mentioned, because you've got no MP, so it's like buff everything forever, and then you end up into the slap fight situation. Whereas in Dragon's Quarter, your issue was everyone's moved, and you just stood there like, if I had the power to slap you right now, I would slap you. But I used all of my movement, and then the problem, and the AI was kind of really unforgiving in that game as well.
So I would imagine like the inverse of. So you're saying that the inverse is true, that like you can only move so far in that game, and not be able to do anything. You would probably end up in the same situation then, whereas you wouldn't want to move. I say, you would want them to come to you. Like
then the thing is, though, is the AI would be like, no.
Yeah,
you come here.
Everyone turtles because nobody wants to lose AP just by moving. It's funny, isn't it? Because like you got the two extremes, but the same outcome happens. I can imagine like a lot of games, it's kind of difficult to come across that balance, and that's why things like mana are an issue, are a thing, because it brings some balance to that. So I can understand that obviously the people behind Fae Tactics wanted to do something different, but unfortunately, one of those major points that they brought to the game now, it kind of takes away some of the what's the word I'm looking for?
Nuances.
Yeah, and the consequences of making bad choices.
Yeah, there's also there's a weird thing, there's a lot of very simple mechanics, but then those little options can create like an array of option paralysis, because me and you have discussed this before, you're very sit there, wait for it to happen, whereas I'm kind of a combination gung-ho. Of proactive, like I'm a little bit more gung-ho.
Yeah.
Or there's times where I'll look at the map and it's like, well, actually it favours me to not be in this position but to be over there. Or this map clearly looks like I'd be better if I just really burst this down. So I always remember the village map, for example, in Vandal Hearts 1, where you got to destroy the goats. It's you can turtle for so long in that section, but you're eventually going to have to send someone out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I pretty much said my piece on Fae Tactics now, in a lot less time than I expected, considering how much we were arguing about this before. But
I think we've had it out. We've already had that discussion, and I think we're able to bounce the points a little bit better,
I think I'm kind of being an armchair developer here, but for the blue HP thing where you can just infinitely buff it, I think a simple workaround would be to have sort of an EMP grid, or just an ability that can bypass the blue HP.
I think we accidentally missed out. One of the other things that the talisman does is it gives you 3 spells that you can use at the start of every turn. And one of them is you can have a team buff where everyone gets a little bit extra, or you can proper power load someone up to get a plus 11 attack. So I think instead of having plus 3, you can just keep giving Chico plus 11, then the following turn plus 11, and then plus 11. So you can probably power overload a character to do something.
Yeah.
And also if John was saying before he was overstatting people into defensive sections, Like if the defense stats were really high, then maybe the go-to is that you can re-edit your stats as well at any point that you want. So maybe it's like, I'm going to have to glass cannon a character to like make them super powerful, and just understand that I'm going to have to assist them with like the heal spell assist, or like they're just going to get downed and I'm going to have to revive them a lot with someone else.
That definitely happens, like later on. So there are a couple of maps where you get NPCs and you obviously can't control what they do, and you have to keep them alive to get a succeed on that particular map. And the number of times one particular gung-ho character just runs forward. He's like a boxing type character who's very melee and very gung-ho, and he got down like 6 or 7 times in one map. The good thing is, instead of only being needed to be hit 3 times to kill him for good, he needed to be hit like 12 times.
Yeah, there's a couple of characters that have ridiculous like death save counts.
Yeah. But I think that's pretty much everything on Fae Tactics.
Fox are literally too angry to die.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
There's a great piece of D&D art, and it's someone in a skeleton with the armor being burned off, and it's like the comment from a DM, and it says, I always enjoy the notion of a scene happening in D&D where someone may reach 0, but they're still too like enamored or too engaged to not die.
Well, that's kind of like Wolverine's whole shtick, isn't it? Like
yeah.
In the comic books,
yeah, but he can't die.
Well, in the comic books, like you always see him, like there's one particular scene where he's getting his arm melted off, and he's still fighting. He's just like, still
yeah, but he knows he's going to heal it back. The D&D DM in question was probably more like the fact that your bravery defies death for a brief period.
Yeah. But yeah, I think overall, like I'm enjoying my time with Fae Tactics. I haven't had a chance to play a lot of tactics games that I'm enjoying this year. The other 2 that I have played and been kind of disappointed with were the Dark Crystal, which was mind-bendingly dull and boring, and Gears Tactics, which unfortunately I played on release on PC. It had like a game save breaking bug, and I was 20 hours in and that was it. I was just like, okay, well, I'm not playing you anymore. Apparently that game was released on consoles recently and became a lot better. I may take another look at it at some point, but I'm enjoying my time with Fae Tactics. I want to see where it goes. I will keep playing it for a little bit longer. I get the impression Gareth might not.
I might have a look at it this afternoon. I'm not going to lie, I'd rather put time into Monster Sanctuary.
It sounds like I would too.
I feel like the progress level in that game, like even the micro progress in character development, or like team development, feels like moving forward. For me, Fae Tactics is the kind of game where you should have strong in-between fight narrative sections, not here's a loading screen, maybe a map.
Like I said, that's kind of the problem with the way that the game's structured, though. Having stuff happen in a story sense out of sequence would be a problem. But that's it, yeah. Alavi, any questions?
No. Or just I will be continuing with Stoneshard and maybe even hunt the wolf.
Oh.
Ah, okay.
In that game, that's a brave move.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, that's pretty much it for everybody. I'd like to take a chance to thank Alavi for joining us. Alavi, thank you. If you would like to see more of Alavi, he's a streamer on Twitch. You want to give out your quick little pitch on that?
Kind of, yeah. I try to stream regularly, like once per week, regular. Right now I'm doing a playthrough, or like semi-playthrough on Project Zomboid, which is a RPG survival game. Yeah,
exactly.
Like RPG elements, but mostly a survival game. It's also isometric and in early access, but one of the worthy ones.
Yeah, it has been for a long time, actually, that game, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right,
well... John can probably maybe put my...
I will, don't worry, I'll do
video.
Yeah, I'll do your due diligence for joining us. So, your Twitch address will come up.
It's just a name is tough to pronounce it and tough to understand.
Yeah.
Yes. All right,
In no
well,
way has that been a discussion.
No, not at all.
It was great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thanks for helping us out. Like I said
Cheers,
at the
laddie.
beginning,
It's a pleasure having you on.
Yeah. You pulled us from the fire the last minute there, so thank you. That's pretty much it. So, Gareth, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Just before we go,
Oh yes, sorry.
if you're listening to this, if we're listening to this on a podcast broadcasting situation, and you are able to leave us a review, we would kindly like that. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, if you can give it the standard like, comment, and if you are not subscribed, click the button. We appreciate that. We have been Roleplay Life. This has been episode 7. Back to John.
Bye, I guess. I've got nothing else. You took all the words. I have nothing else to say, so I guess that's it. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Ciao.
Bye, guys.
Bye.